Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions, we've got answers. I'm Nash. I've been doing Radio Dead Air for ages. In addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gehrman, who also works in IT. We're here to answer your tech questions. If you have them, send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. Or you can put them in the comments on the YouTube. This is normally fun, what we do. The last few years, the tech bros have been ruining this little exercise for us. And I thought this year we'd try to do something a little more accessible. What I'm talking about is this is time for the holiday build guide. What we do is we try to put together lists of parts in a certain price tier to give you an idea of what you can do and what you could put together for a new PC, or in this case, used. Typically, we had an entry level, mid range, and an all out build. This year, I thought I'd add something to maybe try to help people out. I thought I'd add, let's do an eBay build. Let's see about the approximate amount of money it would take on eBay to put together a viable computer build. And I set the threshold of this for $500. And then AI happened, and we even have a question about that later, so I'll get into it more when we get to the question section. What?
Yeah, it's happening.
I can, but I hear, you sound like a drive-through speaker.
Hang on a second. Where in the this microphone? How's I'm sounding now?
There you go. You're good now.
Okay, so AI happens and AI keeps happening is basically what I was saying there. The bubble hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen possibly first quarter of 2026, but I have, I'm iffy on that.
All right, so let's go with the premise of here. First, before that, here are some tips if you're going to be looking for used parts to build a PC, because it is tough money-wise. Everybody's trying to stretch $1 this year. So, if you're going to buy used, you want some place with buyer protection. We tend to go with eBay. There are a couple other auction sites, like I think Macari is still around. Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist doing in-person buys locally. That is buyer beware. You're on your own on that. The upside is you rarely, if ever, do you have to pay sales tax on those, which is a nice bonus, but
or shipping.
But on the downside, you might get stuck with something and you have no recourse. That's why for used, if something goes wrong on eBay, if something stupid happens, then you do have a little support there.
Yeah. For example, if you buy something on eBay and it's supposed to be a video card and you get it and it's a box of rocks, you go, eBay, they sent me a box of rocks, not a video card, and eBay goes, yeah, no, that's not good.
Yeah, they'll do something about it. Also, we based our picks on buy it now prices, so we can kind of get in the ballpark, but you can save a little bit more if you actually go with auctions. The downside is you are not assured to get the item, but if you ride an auction and you pay it and you stay on top of it, you might be able to get a really good deal on something. So that's another way. Do not buy from people with low feedback. I guess that's kind of goes without saying if you're on eBay, but if you see something with someone with like maybe 10 feedback, that's a little suspicious. 0, do not buy. That's a bad, no. Don't do that.
Now, part of that can be tricky because if they're someone, say like me, who primarily just buys things off eBay and doesn't sell them, but I turned around and I needed to sell some stuff, maybe I don't have a lot of feedback. And
you should get feedback from the people you buy things from.
Yeah, you'd think. Paid within 5 minutes of auction closing. Fantastic guy. Would sell to again. But no.
Also, we've noticed, and Mike mentioned this, and this is kind of, I do not grasp this. Best I could think of is they're trying to scam people. Be very careful when you purchase something that you are not buying an empty box. They will even actually say on the listing, hey, we're selling an empty box. I guess the idea is they hope people don't really pay attention.
Okay, so I had a second thought about this because I had an acquaintance. Technically, we're still acquaintances. We just haven't chatted in about a year. Who has all the boxes for all the Warcraft expansions, but she didn't play Warcraft for the first 2 expansions. So she bought the boxes to have them on those boxes that she couldn't have otherwise gotten, just to have them on the shelf for the complete set.
Okay, but that doesn't explain why you'd sell the box for a motherboard.
I agree, but at the same time, I remember that there are people not like you and I who go, I really want the box for Ash, I can't explain it. There are people who sell things on eBay.
It's a scam.
Just don't understand. It's a 90% chance scam, 10% chance something else.
All right. Well, let's start with our picks for CPUs this year, and this is entirely disappointing. And I'm going to explain my pick here, and it's a terrible pick. I'm going to tell you right out of the gate. This is not great, but I do have reasons for it. I went with, I cannot believe it's 2025. And my pick here had to be the Intel Core i3 12100F. Yeah, that is definitely ouch. Yes, Otaku Boy, yes. And the reason why I went with this is because we're going to talk about this later because we specifically got a question about this. DDR5 prices are through the roof. I was hoping to maybe find a deal on, say, a 7500F and go with an AM5 build and maybe do something with that. But there was no way. There was simply no way. So whatever I did had to be DDR4. With that in mind, in order to give the platform a little longevity, going with 12th gen, 13th gen, and 14th gen Intel, you do have some upgrade to something a little more modern than the end of AM4. Because the Intel's 13th gen i5s, the 14th gen i5s, which are still probably pretty good, those will outperform AM4 motherboards. And the advantage here is the 12th, 13th, and 14th gen can make use of DDR4. Now, you will have slower RAM. That can't be avoided. But with this upgrade path, you can at least start with something now, have a computer you can use right now if you need to. I should tell you, this is the worst year we've had for trying to put together these lists. The worst. This might be the year we say, don't bother. But if you must, this at least gives you something resembling an upgrade path. Because AM5 is closed off to you, and Core Ultra stuff that Intel's doing right now, their asking prices are ridiculous. So that's what I picked. What did you pick, Mike?
I picked a Ryzen 5500 because I could not afford a Ryzen 5600 in this build. It's not the best processor in the world, but it's okay. So
The
It's a
Ryzen 55. Yeah. The Ryzen 5500, the AM4 platform, just because I don't recommend it because I'm looking towards longevity and upgradability, AM4 is still competitive. There are some little bit of upgradability to it. It is relatively modern. You can still use it. As far even for a used or hand-me-down system, AM4 is nothing to sneeze at. It is they're decent, they're good for entry-level gaming. You can even potentially get an X3D processor at some point and get a really big boost on gaming, even on older hardware. So AM4 is not out of the question. It wasn't my first pick, but it is a good alternative here because...
And now the other reason I picked this instead of the 5600, again, limited budget. 5500 comes with a cooler. I don't believe the 5600 does, and I can't find the spec sheet I had to back that up.
The 5600X did, but the 5600 didn't.
Yeah. Well, the X was completely out of.
Yeah, so that's the AM4 is still useful. It's not junk. It is still competitive and playable. It's just not my first pick because I like to look toward future-proofing. That doesn't mean if you need a system right now and you're on a low budget, you're trying to do something nice for somebody, AM4 does not suck. That in mind, I was able to find a B660 motherboard for mine. B660, the downside of Intel's platforms is unless you go with their most expensive motherboards, you can't really overclock. But on the other hand, a lot of people really don't bother with overclocking because it's a lot of tinkering stuff. Plus, you have to get a special CPU and motherboard to do it. So it's not quite that big of a downside at this price point. Still, the B660, I went with a B660M, which is one of the MATX form factor. It's a little smaller, but overall, it's a perfectly viable one. Just don't get as many M.2 slots typically on these. Another thing to look out for with getting used motherboards on eBay. Number one, make absolutely certain you get the IO shield with the motherboard on a used motherboard. IO shields are not something you can typically get secondhand. They're that little piece of metal, typically, that gets pressed into the back of your case that allows you to mate the motherboard with the case and have that stuff. If you don't get the IO shield with the motherboard, trying to find one for that specific motherboard will drive you insane. A lot of newer motherboards have the IO shields integrated into the motherboard, so it's all one piece, but a lot of the cheaper ones don't. So if you get a used one, make sure it comes with the IO shield.
Yeah, I was going open box for all my stuff, so that shouldn't be a concern, but you never know.
Do you have a link for your motherboard?
So it is in the listing I sent you.
Where is it? Where's
I got an AS.
Where'd you send them
I sent
to?
you the listing on Blue Sky.
Okay, that's why I didn't see it. All right, let's see.
Because I sent it to you when I wasn't on Discord. So I went with an ASRock B550M.
Yeah.
It has M.2. It's got PCI 4.0 times 16. It's a pretty basic motherboard.
Let's see if I can put it over here.
Yeah. The one I linked to is sold. It sold between when I put it on my list and now.
That's another thing you'll have to look out for. People will buy these quick. That's why we're just kind of giving you the ballpark of what the approximate prices to look for approximate parts to look for, because being as it's used, it's going to go up and down, and actually getting a hold of the specific ones is going to be tricky. We both went with DDR4 16 gigs because it wasn't too terrible.
I went with a brand familiar with, just because there's a lot of screwy brands of DDR on eBay that I have never heard of, and I'm like, I'm gonna go with something I've heard of.
Yeah, I got a Corsair Vengeance. I just managed to get 16 gigs DDR4 3000 for $40. No RGB, but functional, does the job. 16 gigs. Let's see, what do you have here? You had Hyper Fury X, also for about, you had slightly faster, in fact, and also for about $40, which that's a pretty fair price.
Well, you got to hit the drop down. You got to hit their drop down, because mine's actually $68. Oh, it's a 16 gig kit.
Well, that's not quite so good.
That's not quite so good. No.
Yeah, you can typically, if you look.
I think you got a slightly better deal, even though I got faster RAM. So, bit of a trade.
Yeah. Let's see what's next on the list here. Okay, so that's let's back up here. All right, so next, power supply. Power supplies are typically one of those things that it's not advisable to get used. Open box and refurbished, different story, because that still has a little bit more wiggle room there. Used, you have to be concerned about with power supplies, but eBay certified refurbished, or the company themselves refurbished, I was able to find a 750 watt Thermaltake Tough Power modular, semi-modular, but that's fine. Power supply, 80 plus gold for $60, which not bad these days. Not great, but not bad.
I will say, I may have accidentally linked the wrong thing, but I got a 600 watt power supply. My listing says 650 watts, probably because I don't have object permanence from tab to tab.
Also a Thermaltake. Yeah, 650 at this level. I like the 750 for upgradability, but 600 watts is still perfectly viable for this this price range. Because you're not going to be running a 4090 on this thing. You're not going to be running a 5090 on this system. I did like having the 750, because looking forward to maybe getting a bigger video card later down the line if you want to. But 600 is still pretty good, and there are a lot of bigger video cards that 600 watt power supply will still handle. Again, refurbished or open box are perfectly acceptable. But used are ones I'd think twice about if I was getting a used power supply. All right. Next. For storage for M.2 SSDs.
Yep.
This was harder. And given the prices I was able to find on eBay and some of the things I was able to look for, I would recommend just buying a new one on this. This is probably, used hard drives are not a great idea in the first place. But there were a few open box and a couple of what are considered pulls, which came from new units that people didn't use. We both went around the 512 gigabyte range, because 1 terabyte was just out of the question. And it's the same reason as DDR5. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, and I was also looking at it and going, 256 would save me a few dollars here, but 256 doesn't. It just doesn't feel like it's enough these days.
I was able to find an open box from reputable seller for $37, 512, and it's a Western Digital, And if you search the part number, which will help if you're going to try and do this, if you search the part number, it's the same as a retail unit. This came out of an HP system. So it's about the same as a retail unit, same as an SN530. Not the fastest, but not bad. At this price range, you also might want to look at getting a PCIe 3 M.2 because those still work. They're fairly quick. You're not going to really notice too much of a difference in load times between PCIe Gen 4 and Gen 3. But and you can get deals on the PCIe 3 stuff because they're slowly clearing it out. Probably not for much longer, but you will be able to find it. This one's a PCIe 3. You found a Samsung. Let's get the link here. Dang, this is screwed up. The links are not work. Yeah, the links. It's just this giant.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know, man.
You realize you just had to copy the item number and everything after the question mark you didn't need?
I do now. So this is a Samsung 512 PCIe Gen 4.
Okay,
so a few dollars more, a little faster.
Yeah, a little faster, not that much different, and it is a Samsung, so it's reputable. It's a pull from brand new system. Sometimes they'll get a system, they're like, I want a bigger hard drive in it, and they got one aftermarket, they get their own 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and they have this smaller one with nothing to do with it, so they sell them. So this is it's still you, but for this price, I also will note you can get a brand new Western Digital blue SSD for about $45 on eBay, or not 45, about $54 on Amazon. So it's up to you if you want to take a chance on an open box or if you want to get one that has its own warranty.
The other thing I'll say that's screwy about eBay drives, and I saw a lot of this, is you'll see some very unusual sizes. And I'm not talking like, oh, this is intended for a laptop. I'm like, how are they fitting that much memory in that form? I don't believe this. And it'll say, oh, this is from this specific machine, OS included. And I'm like, I'm not installing that on my machine. I don't know what's on there.
The smaller form factors, they work because they exclude DRAM. So they don't have a DRAM buffer. It's all flash memory. So they're slightly slower. But the trade-off is you get a smaller form factor. And you can use the small ones in a full-size motherboard on a PC.
Yeah.
It does work. It's just, they're a little bit limited because of the size.
It was also a lot of really strange brand names again.
Yeah. Okay, video card time. I went with something a little bit bigger than what Mike went with because in this, the CPU is going to help a bunch, but I went toward GPU power as what I wanted to look for. There are kind of two viable candidates at this price point for around $200 and a little under if you get lucky. The two potential options are either the RX 7600, which is, again, it's an 8 gigabyte card. It's slightly newer than the other pick. You can get these around 200 or less if you're lucky. Also look for auctions to maybe get a deal on these. It is about as entry level as you can get. If you get super lucky, you might be able to find an RX 6700 in this price range, which will give you a 10 gigabyte graphics card, about the same power level, only with just an earlier ray tracing generation on this, but not fantastic. It's what you could afford. So that's about this. The other option is to look for an RTX 4060, which a reason you might want to consider that is DLSS. You have the NVIDIA set for enhancements in video games, slightly better ray tracing, though not seeing how you're going to use it very much at this price range. Still, the RTX 4060 is, and also the performance difference between the 5060 and the 4060 is not huge. So that gives the 4060 a little bit more longevity in the marketplace because you went with the other option. This is the absolute what else can you do card.
Yeah.
Probably the only last acceptable card I'd consider used. Oh wow, the price went up to $840.
Yes, I was about to comment on that. Between when I put this on my list, this guy changed the price to $840. Now, I'm going to state, there are still dozens. I put it on my build at $189.99. Okay?
Mike?
Yeah.
He's got a 0 feedback, Mike.
He did not have a 0 feedback when I linked this. Because I was looking at that specifically. So,
well, honestly,
there are still dozens of cards for the RTX 3060, 12 gig, in the $200 range. Literally, I'm scrolling through eBay.
Would not. I'm going to have to disagree with that pick. For the 3060 at the $200 range, I wouldn't say it's worth it compared to the 4060.
Yeah.
For the 3060, you can get at about $120. You can get a 6 gigabyte 3060. It is slow. It is still a 6 gigabyte gaming card, but it's $120 to $120. That's about the best entry level graphics card you can get right now. Is a used 3060 6 gigabyte. It's older, though it does still have access to DLSS, which will help with scaling and improve some performance levels. The 4060 has the advantage because you do get frame generation, which can help a little. The 3060 does not have that option. For $120, a 6 gig 3060 is you're desperate to have a graphics card that works. They are viable. They're just not first pick. So, and finally, for the case,
while we're looking here, I'm going to say I have found RTX 4060, which I sort of searched on for the same price as my original link, for $185. So yeah.
For the case, we both went with about the same thing. You went with a Montech X3 mesh.
X3 mesh. Okay. Now, I will say the price is mislisted on my listing because I also just realized it's supposed to be $6 cheaper. If you go to the actual linking, it's $33.99.
Wow.
Now,
you got a good deal on that.
Let me tell you why I picked this case.
Yeah.
It's a decent case, mesh, it's got the standard stuff we ask for, and it includes 5 fans.
Yeah. Montech is good about that. Are they great fans? No, but they're cheap fans. And this is an open box with a very good reputation on it. So that's an excellent deal for now. I do think the X3 is is that an MATX case?
Give me a second and I'll let you know.
Is that an MATX or full size? Let me look. See overview, because that's a full size. That's an excellent deal right there. Someone might want to grab that. I think that this looks like a full size case. ATX, this is a full for $33. That's an excellent one. $34. You can find other ones
now. Yeah. Now, one thing I should have said at the beginning of this, I did not include shipping costs on any of my things. And the reason for that is because it varies greatly. Some people just go price, shipping is free. Other people go price is lower, shipping. And some people go price is higher plus shipping.
Yeah.
So,
that's mine is also a Montech. Montech is kind of killing it at the low end of stuff available. And actually, mine is a Montech from Newegg, who sells stuff on eBay. And they put some deals out there. Mine was a with free shipping, we're close, because yours with shipping comes out to about 45 for me, about 45, 48 for me. This is with free shipping for $61.99, a Montech X5. So it's the same, it's the same model line. We went with the same idea. This one also comes with 4 fans, though 3 of them are 140 millimeter. Still, free fans. That's the thing about Montech. Montech will just throw fans at you. Are they great? No, but if you...
By the way, I was incorrect. Mine comes with 6 fans.
So, yeah. Montech will just throw fans at you. So you will have them. Are they great? No. But they work.
No.
And they will work on your system until you can afford to get something better. At this price range, you have to consider getting something functional now and then getting something improved later, because we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
So for example, all the fans in mine are Molex. So
yeah, that's the problem. The problem with that is the fans will be full speed all the time. Molex fans have no speed control. If that's not a deal breaker, you get good. They will work. It's just gonna be loud as heck. Be aware of it. I think a lot of I think at the low, now these I think might be 4-pin, because there are ARGB, so that these might be a little bit better, but there are less of them. But still, they might be a little bit. Let's see. I'd have to look that up, but still,
the way I look at it, 6 fans. Even if you said, "Oh well, Molex fans are $5 each," that means you're getting a case for $3.
Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, so that is the what we looked at. This, yeah, that's all the part. It was rough. I wanted to go AM5 if not for the DDR thing. So it sucks this year.
Concern is,
huh?
We're supposed to do the mid-range build next, or the low-end build next week at $700.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're going to get that much better computer out of $700.
I don't know. And with new prices, yeah, that might be a problem. Because I was looking right now, 16 gig kits are going for like $200.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So my total was, if you take off my $6 mistake, and of course substitute a not ridiculous price changed card, I was at $506.
Mine was 513. So we kind of bumped around there. It will vary a lot on eBay, but that's an idea of what you could expect to spend on used parts on eBay. And that's what the best you can do for your money at this point, at least in our opinion. It's just a bad year. This is probably the worst year for this kind of thing. And it's really frustrating. Don't worry, it's frustrating for everyone. Like, the tech YouTubers right now are pulling their hair out because it's impacting. Who wants to watch videos about new products that nobody can get? It's frustrating everybody. Well, let's actually get to your questions. And the first question this week is kind of, on topic here. Let's see here. I'm bring it up on screen so we can see it. Okay. First question this week. Could you please explain why the price of RAM quadrupled in one fucking month? From Hector. Okay.
Yes. AI.
All right. Yeah. In short, the short version is AI. Here's the long version. There are a certain number of companies that have fabrication lines to make RAM. Samsung, Hynix, SK Hynix, Samsung, and what's the other one? Starts with an H. I forget. Well, No, not Hitachi. There's a very limited number of people who make Micron. Thanks, Raider. There's a limited number of companies that make.
Micron famously starts with H.
There's a limited number of companies that make RAM chips. Now, how they've typically done this in the past, including with illegal collusion, which they were busted on, these companies in the past, is they try to keep the price of RAM at a certain level. Meaning they will produce enough, put it on the market, and if the price of RAM starts going up beyond where people are willing to spend money on, they will kick up production and fill the stock in, bring the prices down, and they keep things balanced. And again, they work with each other, which they shouldn't do. Man, remember when we used to have laws? That was a great time. I miss laws.
Oh, indeed.
They tend to keep the price of the market pretty stable. Then AI happened. And what's happened is these companies want something called HBM RAM. It is a high-speed RAM chips that they want for their server units and for the GPUs, the server GPUs for making up lies to tell on the internet. What they've done is they approached the large companies who have RAM fabrication and said, here's a bunch of money that we are in a circular roundabout, but we're going to make a huge order with you. If you task your fabrication lines to make our HBM RAM. And they went, I like money. And all of the lines suddenly that would have filled the gap when stock started dipping on say DDR RAM prices, they've all been tasked to these special order. So there's no more RAM to fill the market, and demand goes up, but there's not enough to fill it.
Well, the demand is about the same as the supply has gone down effectively.
Yeah, supply's gone down. Now this is not like I want to stress here, they're not like taking the same RAM that would go in your desktop system and throwing it into servers. No, it's just there's not enough being made anymore. That's why the supply has dwindled, but there isn't any new stock coming in to replace it. This is a problem for a lot of reasons. We're seeing it right now first in PCs because DDR RAM sticks are one of those those items that they're specialized, go pretty quick. And they're very visible as a matter of stock being dried up.
Canary in a coal mine situation.
Right. Now, this is also affecting SSDs because SSDs also require DRAM chips for buffering. And if they can't get those, they can make some cheaper SSDs, but it's a little bit harder. And I believe some of those lines also make flash memory as well. Great. This kind of stretches out from there, unfortunately, because just about every device that has a computer processor in it uses DRAM. Phones use DRAM, SSDs use DRAM, GPUs use a specialized DRAM, which is called GDDR. It's graphics double data rate RAM. If your car has a processor in it, it needs RAM. Your smart TVs, any device, any smart device, it's got some amount of RAM in there, even if it's a tiny amount. If they can't get those chips, they can't make those products. Lenovo actually has a stockpile of RAM that they held on to in order to help keep their prices down. So Lenovo, as far as desktops, are kind of going to kill it this year coming, I think. To give you an idea of the price jump, the RAM in my system, I have 64 gigs of RAM. When I purchased it, it was close to $400 because it was brand new. DDR5 was just came out, And I just gotten onto the AM5 platform. So it was somewhere between $300 and $400. Over time, that 64 gig chip set of RAM came down to about $250, $200, $250. That same set of RAM now is $600 within the course of about a month. The price went from $200 to $600. That's for a 64 gig kit of RAM. A 16 gig kit of RAM was under 100, well under 100. Now it's at 200. So what you could have used to buy 64 gigs a month ago, now we'll just barely buy 16 gigs. It's a bad situation. Like I feel like it's going to wreck the holiday for a lot of people. If you play it right and you get a cheap PC right now, if you pick one correctly, you could potentially just yank the RAM out of it and sell it for more than the price that you've spent on the PC. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, y'all. It's the worst. So that's where we are.
I'm trying to see what my RAM cost when I bought it. It's not the right one.
Let me see mine. It's a great thing about Newegg. They have the you can keep an eye on all your past orders, no problem. Let's see. How long? That was a long time back. That was back in 2022. So that was 3 years ago. Let's see. Look at the invoice. It was about $400 in 2022. And the price had come down between then to now to about half that for 64 gigs, about half that cost. Now it's gone more than I paid new for this. I could probably sell this for $600 right now. I wouldn't have any RAM in my system anymore, but I could. It'd be stupid, but I could. So it's a bad time, is what we're saying. How long is it going to take to sort out? It depends. Will those lines be freed up again to start DDR production again soon? There's going to be a lag time. There's going to be a significant lag time. It's going to be months. So congratulations, the Grinch that stole holiday computers. That's AI. And it's so dumb because the bubble is just, well, that's where we are with that. We'll just have to keep an eye on it and see how long it takes to get sorted out. It might be a long while. All right, next question. This is from Eric J. Hello, Nash and Mike. I'm setting up a Plex server. I want to know if there's a specific video and audio format that's better to use. I'm trying to keep them as compatible as possible for the most devices. We have 2 TVs and a few phones and laptops and such. The Plex server itself is an old Dell Precision M4600 with a Core i7 2820QM. It's a laptop. We were given as a hand-me-down, if that makes any difference. Thank you, Eric J. Okay. The problem you're going to have here is that laptop. Plex and other servers like it, media servers. There's the thing about having a media server is you are trying to send videos potentially to many different kinds of devices. And those devices will have different codecs enabled on them based on how new they are. You have...
And as we had a story last week, sometimes those codecs are now being disabled because the manufacturers don't want to pay the licensing for them anymore. The
oldest one typically that is compatible with the widest range of devices that's out there right now is H.264. But you will find some stuff in H.265 or AV1. Those are newer codecs. They get better image quality across lower bandwidth. However, if your computer's a little older, or if you're sending it to a console or to a smart TV and it doesn't have that codec in it, it can't play it. So what the media server does is it does something called transcoding. it takes the existing file and on the fly, while it's streaming to the device, it will encode it into a new format that device can read. Typically, it's H.264. If you encode it in that format to begin with, it won't have to do any transcoding, which is going to be a problem for you because the transcoding relies on the CPU/GPU power of the server in the first place. When I rebuilt my Plex server, I specifically got a modern-ish Intel CPU because it has a feature called QuickSync, which allows the CPU and the integrated GPU in it to work together to encode video very quickly. That means if I get a video in, say, H.264 or 265, which has better image quality at a lower bandwidth, and I save that in my server, if it has to re-encode to a device that can't handle H.265, then it can use that CPU I got. You have a considerably older CPU, considering that is like a 15-year-old, 15-year-old. Woo. No, actually, no, it's about 15 years old. That's the second generation core.
I'm just looking at the form factor of the laptop and going, that's at least a decade.
Yeah. So it might have trouble with QuickSync. It definitely is going to have newer codecs available off. If you put Linux on there, you might have options there, but it's going to have issues with transcoding. So the downside is the higher the quality, you can encode H.264 in higher quality, but that's going to make the file size much bigger. You're going to take a quality hit if you want things to be across the network. If you want to and also another thing transcoding does is it can allow you to send a video at a lower bit rate. Say if you're on mobile and you want to stream something, you can tell it to send it to me in 720p or maybe 480p to save my data rate over my phone. That's also transcoding. And that's what happens when you try to do that on a CPU that can't handle it. The whole system slows down and you will get pausing, buffering, stuttering while it waits to send it to your whatever device you're trying to watch. Until you can get something better, it's probably a good idea to encode stuff in H.264. That's going to be the widest. H.264 and audio codec AAC, which I think tends to be default, but I'm not entirely sure. That's going to be the widest compatibility of devices without having to re-encode the file. So if you're worried about that, the codec you want to use with that machine is H.264. If you can get something newer down the line, also an Intel because of the QuickSync functionality, something like maybe 10th, 11th, 12th, a newer used device later on, then you could think about using H.265 to save on storage cost. And when it transcodes, it will retain the image quality, but you can save the original file in a smaller format with higher image quality. So, all right. And last one this week. Hey guys, my question is about future-proofing. I use my PC for work, but it's mainly for gaming. Games keep making use of more cores, and is it better to get a CPU with more cores to handle future games? Right now I have a 5600X and I want to move to AM5 soon. Would it be better to get something like a 9900X or a 9950X, or is that just a waste of money? Thank you, Richard T. It depends. Generally, though,
see, where I would say is, you say you use it for work. What kind of work?
Yeah.
If it is just like general word processing, Excel, etc., but its primary is going to be gaming, then maybe you look at the 9950X. But if it is to be more intensive work,
well, no, 9950X, that's the highest level. No, you mean like the 9800X or the 9600X. 9950X is 16 core, 32 thread.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, he's asking about that. So, I mean,
okay,
we don't know what kind of money he has. So,
all right. Well, if we're talking about gaming with CPUs, there's a little bit of a trade-off. Some games make use of more cores. Some games, the more cores you feed it, the better. Like I think Stellaris and Civilization, those that have to run a lot of complex computations in the background, they like more cores because that's calculation, and that's what cores excel at. They do more computations, and can handle more threads at the same time. Other games don't rely so heavily on cores. They can make use of multiple cores, but it's not as essential. The trade-off is the more cores you have on a CPU, typically, the slower it is. Not by much, but it can run at a lower speed. It has to run at a lower speed because if it ran at a higher speed, it would overheat because there are too many cores on the. That's why you see like let's see, the 9800X, which is 8 core, 16 thread, is 4.5 gig. No, it's the Intel one. Which gigahertz on? Not the 9800X 3D, the 9800X. That is yeah, we'll talk about the 3D in a second. I don't want to talk about 3D. It's just, for frick's sake. Can I just see the specs on the 9800X? I want to be accurate on this.
This is the Intel one, right?
No, this is AMD 9800X.
Okay.
Or no, 97. You're right, 9700X. Because dang, they differentiated it because they were smart. The 9700X, which is 8 core, 16 thread. Let's see, what's the top speed on it? It's the
5.5 gigahertz, base 3.8.
5.5 gigahertz. That can boost to 5.5 gigahertz. The 9950X. Let's see, what's the boost on that? 5.7 gigahertz. So, no, the 9700 should, or 90, that should boost higher. 9700 boost clock, please. Up to 5.5. Wait, what? Huh.
I think
I'm starting to look dumb here.
A factor you're overlooking, Nash. The 9700 is only pulling 65 watts. The 90,
that's right. That's right. That's what they did. That's the dip. You can set the 9700X to 105 watts, and that will increase the speed. But that was the controversy with the 9000 series because it was at a lower. It was actually in some instances slower than the 7000 series, or not faster than the 7. That's what I'm remembering. There you go. It was the. You can turn up the wattage on this and get anyway. Okay, it still bears out. The less cores can boost to a higher clock speed because there's less cores doing work. They're not as hot, so it can boost a little bit higher. The more cores, the less it boosts. And with frame rate, clock speed matters more than core count. So depending on the type of game you're playing, if you need to have like Fortnite or any other first person shooter or Marvel Rivals or something, higher clock speed means higher frame rate, depending on how well your graphics card goes. Now, what changes the equation here is the X3D processors. What they do is they add extra RAM specifically geared toward games and stuff to give it a little more cache on the CPU and goose the frame rate a bit. Give it more space to work, more. So in that instance, you get something like the 9800X3D, the 9950X3D, even the 9900X3D, which is kind of the black sheep of the X3D line, that and the 9600X3D. You get those, you kind of get the best of both worlds. Like a 9950X3D, if you want a bunch of cores and you want faster frame rate, by adding that X3D RAM, it kind of gives you both. And that's where the 9000 series has really kind of excelled with the X3D stuff. You get improved speed and you get extra core count. So if it's gaming focused, it's kind of the 9950X 3D is kind of marketed as it can game and it can also do work. Here's 32 threads if you do want to try and do some compiling stuff, maybe a little bit of Blender stuff, not like Threadripper style stuff, but if you want to do a little bit of work with 3D and stuff, there you go. You have the options there. If you want to game with it, you have the extra X3D RAM cache, and that improves your frame rates with games. The downside is it's hella expensive. What is the 9950X3D at right now?
Let's
see. The X3D is hella expensive. Yeah, I'm seeing just for the CPU, I'm seeing something like $660 right now. 800X3D. Yeah, that's $450. So there's a bit of a trade there. Like you can get the 8-core 16-thread 9800X3D. That will give you even more gaming performance, as well as handle a little bit of a higher clock speed. But that's $550. And the regular 9700X price is that's about $100. That's $300. That's $150 less than the X3D version. All told, it's a matter of how much you're willing to spend, what you really need it for, and if you're a frame rate junkie. My personal opinion, unless you have money up the wazoo, the 9700X, or even if you can get a deal on it, if you can find one used, the 7800X or the 7700X, they're pretty close in speed. The 7700X and the 9700X they're 8-core, 16-thread, and you can still buy a 7700X for $260 right now, which is a pretty good deal. That's might be more what your speed for gaming, unless you are just intent on bleeding edge. If you're intent on bleeding edge, you want a 9950X3D. Understand that when we say increase frame rate, we're not talking about this will get you just to 60 frames per second. We're talking 140, 180, 220 frames per second. We're talking the crazy amounts that you need the special, the high-end monitors to handle, to even perceive in the right way. That's what we're really talking about with this. If you're just looking like 60 frames per second or even 90 frames per second, any of the Ryzen CPUs will handle you if you've got a good enough graphics card. Any of them will do the job. Even like the Ryzen 5 7600 will do a great job. If you're just, it's when you're talking like the crazy speed levels, the crazy FPS. That's when you're kind of looking to maximize and optimize that as best as possible with the X3D RAM, with more cores. Personally, for most most general users, if they want something a little bit better than just the base model, the 8-core 16 threads are the sweet spot for most folks. Especially how efficient and how much work they can get done now. Way more than previously. This generation of Ryzen, the last 2 generations of Ryzen have been a huge jump forward. You can do video stuff with an 8-core 16 thread in a way you couldn't do before. You could do that stuff before, but it was a noticeable difference. So there has been improvements. I'd say for most, you can look at the 8-core. That's probably a good sweet spot for that. Overall, it's always going to depend on what your specific workload is going to be and what specific games you're trying to play. If you're not doing crazy ass super levels of like Stellaris and like 16 opponents, I think you'll be fine with an 8-core. But then again, it's up to you and what you want to spend on it. The X3D stuff has really been a game changer. So you could probably, like, a 9800 X3D would be kind of a good balance between super crazy core rate. Because if you're not using the cores for anything else, it's a bit of a waste of money. It really is. Like, when I was looking to get my system, there was the 7950 X3, 7950X when it came out, 16 core, 32 thread. There was the 7700X, which was 8-core, 16 thread. And in between the two, there's the 1700X, 12 core, 24 thread. And I looked at that and I said, yeah, that's about what I actually need to do what I do. That's good for video rendering and also streaming. That fits my need. If I upgrade down the line, if I get a newer Ryzen CPU, I'm probably going to go for a 16 core just because I'd like an upgrade. But as for what I needed to do, the 7900 at 12 cores has been more than adequate. It's done a great job. All right. Whew, that was a lot of talking. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No. I think we're good.
All right. We haven't got any more questions. So I think get rolling. Yeah. I think that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern with part 2 of the holiday build guide. We're going to look at our entry-level system, and I can't believe I'm saying this, at $700 for an entry-level PC. Hello, darkness, my old friend. All right. Well, in the meanwhile, have yourselves a good week. Send us your questions to request@radio.air.com, and we'll see you next Saturday. Good night, folks.